The Untold Story of Taylor Swift, Childhood, Struggles, Success, and Global Fame. Part 1, Roots of a Dream. The story begins on December 13, 1989, in Reading, Pennsylvania. The winter air outside was sharp and cold, but inside the Swift household, there was warmth, laughter, and a sense of promise. Andrea and Scott Swift welcomed their first daughter into the world and gave her a name that would one day echo in stadiums across the globe: Taylor Allison Swift. Taylor's childhood was set against the backdrop of Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, a quiet town with rolling farmland and tight-knit neighborhoods. Her father, Scott, worked as a financial advisor, while her mother, Andrea, had once pursued a career in marketing before devoting her time to raising her children. Taylor also had a younger brother, Austin, with whom she shared not just sibling rivalry, but a deep and supportive bond. From the beginning, Taylor seemed destined to tell stories. Before she could even write complete sentences, she was inventing elaborate tales with her dolls and putting on performances for her family. Andrea often described her daughter as someone who lived with a spark in her eyes, a spark that told the world she would never settle for a quiet life. Childhood curiosity and early influences. Taylor's home was filled with music. Her grandmother, Marjorie Finley, had been an opera singer, and her soaring voice became one of Taylor's earliest inspirations. She would listen to Marjorie's recordings, fascinated by the power of a single voice to fill a room and stir emotions. At the same time, Taylor's parents introduced her to classic country artists, pop singers, and the kind of storytelling music that would later shape her own style. When other children her age were still reciting nursery rhymes, Taylor was listening intently to Shania Twain, Dolly Parton, and the Dixie Chicks. Their lyrics painted pictures of heartbreak, resilience, and dreams. Even as a little girl, she didn't just hum along. She studied the words, the way each phrase carried weight, the way melodies could make people cry or smile. First brush with destiny. At the age of 11, Taylor experienced her first defining moment. She sang the national anthem at a Philadelphia 76ers basketball game, standing in front of thousands of people, clutching a microphone that seemed too big for her hands. She felt the rush of adrenaline, fear, and joy all at once. When her voice soared through the arena, it was more than a performance. It was a declaration. She belonged on a stage. That same year, fate came knocking in another way. A computer repairman came to fix the family's computer, and when he saw Taylor's interest in music, he showed her a few chords on the guitar. For most kids, it would have been a fun moment, soon forgotten. But for Taylor, it was like unlocking a treasure chest. She practiced relentlessly, her fingers blistered and raw, until the chords became songs and the songs became stories she wanted the world to hear. Struggles and determination. But dreams are rarely welcomed with open arms. At school, Taylor faced bullying. Her peers didn't understand why she spent her free time writing songs instead of hanging out at the mall. They teased her for carrying a guitar and mocked her ambition. Many small-town kids dreamed of getting out, but few dared to actually try. Taylor dared. Her parents recognized this fire in her and supported her fully. Andrea would drive Taylor to Nashville with demo tapes she recorded, hoping record labels would see the magic they saw in their daughter. But the doors didn't open easily. Taylor was turned away again and again. Executives told her she was too young, that her songs weren't polished enough, that there was no place for her in an industry dominated by seasoned performers. Most children would have cried, packed away the guitar, and let the dream fade. But Taylor wasn't most children. She came home, wrote more songs, and polished her craft. Rejection only sharpened her determination. Seeds of greatness. By the time she was 13, Taylor had written dozens of songs. One of them, a heartfelt track called Lucky You, hinted at the storytelling genius that would later define her career. Her voice wasn't just singing notes. It was weaving emotions, capturing teenage innocence, and longing in a way that made listeners stop and think, this girl has something special. Andrea and Scott realized that if Taylor were to succeed, she needed to be closer to Nashville, the beating heart of country music. And so the family made a life-changing decision. They would relocate to Hendersonville, Tennessee, a suburb of Nashville, to give Taylor a real shot at her dream. Practicing these sentences will not only help you sound more fluent, but also give you a natural rhythm, just like Taylor's lyrics flow with meaning. She wasn't most children. She came home, wrote more songs, and polished her craft. It was a bold move, filled with uncertainty. They were leaving behind the familiar comfort of Pennsylvania for the unknown challenges of Tennessee. But Taylor saw it not as a sacrifice, but as an opportunity. She was ready to chase the dream, no matter the cost. As you listen to this part of Taylor Swift's story, notice the clear structure of English sentences. Try repeating some of the lines aloud. Dreams are rarely welcomed with open arms. At the same time, Taylor immersed herself in songwriting. She wasn't just imitating her idols. She was crafting her own voice. She wrote about school crushes, dreams of stardom, and the bittersweet feelings of adolescence. Her songs were raw, authentic, and relatable. They didn't sound like polished studio work, but they carried an honesty that couldn't be faked. So there she was, a young teenager with a guitar, a notebook full of songs, and an unshakable belief that one day the world would listen. Taylor Swift was not just chasing a dream, she was building one, brick by brick, chord by chord. The quiet town girl was ready to step into the bright lights of Nashville, where destiny awaited. Part 2. The Country Girl with a Guitar. The move to Hendersonville, Tennessee was more than just a change of address for the Swift family. It was a leap of faith. To outsiders, it might have seemed like a family chasing the impossible dreams of their teenage daughter. But to Andrea and Scott, it was an act of trust. They had seen Taylor's drive, her relentless songwriting, and her unwavering belief that she was meant to make music. Taylor, barely in her teens, was suddenly closer to Nashville, the city of country music legends. Here the streets echoed with stories of those who had tried, failed, and sometimes, just sometimes, made it big. For Taylor, Nashville wasn't just a city, it was a challenge, a mountain to climb, and she was determined to reach the summit. First steps into Nashville. Taylor would spend her days after school perfecting her guitar skills and refining her lyrics. With Andrea often by her side, she would visit Music Row, the historic hub of Nashville's music industry, armed with demo CDs. Each knock on a record label's door was answered with skepticism or outright rejection. "You're too young," they would say. "Come back when you're older." But every no only fueled her determination. Taylor began performing at small venues, county fairs, and karaoke contests. She sang anywhere she could, even if the stage was little more than a wooden platform in front of a handful of strangers. These performances became her training ground, shaping her into a fearless performer. The Big Machine opportunity. Taylor's big break came when she performed at the Bluebird Cafe, a small but legendary Nashville venue where many songwriters had been discovered. That night, among the audience, sat Scott Borchetta, a music executive who was preparing to launch his own record label, Big Machine Records. Borchetta saw in Taylor what others had missed, not just talent, but vision and determination. He signed her as one of the label's first artists. Taylor was only 15 years old, but she was about to step onto the stage of the music industry in a way that would change it forever. Taylor Swift, a debut album. In 2006, Taylor released her self-titled debut album, Taylor Swift. The lead single, Tim McGraw, was a song she had written in math class, dreaming about a high school romance fading away with time. Listeners were captivated, not just by the catchy melody, but by the fact that this teenager had written the lyrics herself. The album's success was remarkable for a debut. Songs like Teardrops on My Guitar and Our Song became anthems for young listeners who felt Taylor was singing directly to them. Her ability to capture teenage emotion with simple yet profound lyrics set her apart from manufactured pop stars. Suddenly, Taylor wasn't just the girl with a guitar anymore. She was a rising star, climbing country charts, performing on national television, and walking red carpets. Yet behind the glamour was still the same determined girl who had once been turned away on Music Row. Struggles with fame. But fame, even in its early stages, wasn't easy. Taylor was thrust into a world where every performance was scrutinized, every outfit dissected, and every word analyzed. Critics questioned whether she was just another teen fad. Older musicians sometimes dismissed her as too green to be taken seriously. In school, things weren't much easier. Classmates who once teased her for chasing music now saw her on TV. But instead of admiration, some responded with jealousy. Taylor later revealed that she often ate lunch alone, writing in her journals while others gossiped about her. But instead of letting loneliness consume her, she turned it into fuel. Those journals became lyrics, those solitary lunches became songs, and those moments of exclusion became her creative fire. A glimpse of stardom. By 2007, Taylor's debut album had gone multi-platinum. She was nominated for awards, performing at the Grand Ole Opry, and beginning to carve her name into the music industry. She wasn't just accepted into Nashville anymore. She was becoming its brightest young star. Still, Taylor never lost sight of where she came from. During interviews, she spoke about her small-town roots, her love for storytelling, and her gratitude for her family. Audiences connected with her because she felt real. She wasn't a manufactured image. She was a girl who had lived the very stories she sang about. As you hear Taylor's story, pay attention to how sentences carry rhythm. Try repeating this sentence aloud. Notice the repetition. It helps with intonation and makes your English sound more natural, just as Taylor uses rhythm in her lyrics. Those journals became lyrics, those solitary lunches became songs, and those moments of exclusion became her creative fire. By the time Taylor was finishing her teenage years, she had already achieved what many only dream of, but this was just the beginning. She had proven she could break into the music industry. Now she would prove she could dominate it. What lay ahead was not just success, but superstardom. With her next album, Fearless, Taylor Swift would step onto the world stage and begin her transformation from a promising country singer into one of the most influential artists of her generation. Part 3. Breaking Through with Fearless. By 2008, Taylor Swift had already captured the attention of the country music world with her debut album, but she was restless. The teenager who once strummed her guitar in Pennsylvania bedrooms was now writing songs that aimed higher, not just at the country charts, but at the hearts of millions across genres. Taylor was determined to prove that she was more than a one-hit wonder. She wanted her next album to be bigger, braver, and more fearless. Crafting Fearless. The creation of her second album was personal, intense, and filled with the determination of a young woman who understood that the spotlight could dim just as quickly as it had lit up. Taylor spent months writing about her experiences, school crushes, heartbreaks, growing pains, and the universal longing for love and belonging. Songs like Love Story and You Belong With Me weren't just catchy. They were stories wrapped in melodies. Love Story reimagined Romeo and Juliet with a happy ending, a reflection of Taylor's ability to take timeless themes and give them a modern twist. You Belong With Me spoke directly to the teenage experience of feeling invisible next to the popular girl. When Fearless was released in November 2008, it wasn't just another album. It was a cultural moment. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for weeks. Young fans clung to every lyric, while older audiences were impressed by the maturity of her songwriting. The global explosion. The Fearless era marked Taylor's leap from rising star to global superstar. Her songs dominated radio stations, not only in the US, but across the world. The music videos, Taylor in princess dresses, standing on balconies or scribbling in notebooks, felt relatable and cinematic at the same time. In 2009, Fearless became the best-selling album in the US and won the coveted Grammy for Album of the Year, making Taylor the youngest artist ever to receive the honor at the time. The small-town girl with a guitar was now standing on the grandest stage in music, clutching gold trophies and proving that her songs resonated with people everywhere. The MTV VMA incident. But with success came moments that would test her. One of the most infamous happened at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards. Taylor had just won the award for Best Female Video for You Belong With Me. As she stood on stage, wide-eyed and overwhelmed, a figure stormed the stage. It was Kanye West. Taking the microphone, he declared that Beyoncé had one of the best videos of all time, effectively cutting short Taylor's moment of triumph. The crowd gasped. Cameras captured Taylor frozen in shock, clutching her award but unable to finish her speech. It was a moment replayed around the world, sparking debates about respect, race, artistry, and fame. But what mattered most was how Taylor responded. She didn't retaliate with anger. She didn't engage in public feuds. Instead, she carried herself with grace. And later, when Beyoncé won Video of the Year, the superstar invited Taylor back on stage to finish her speech. The incident cemented Taylor not only as a rising star, but also as a symbol of resilience in the face of public humiliation. A young woman in a big world. As Taylor toured the world with Fearless, performing in front of sold-out arenas, she was still just a teenager navigating fame. Backstage, she journaled about her feelings, her fears, and her excitement. She often admitted that she felt like an outsider, even as she stood in front of adoring fans. The Fearless Tour. The pressures were immense. Every outfit was photographed, every rumored romance splashed across tabloids. Taylor began to understand the cost of fame, the loss of privacy, the endless scrutiny, and the weight of expectations. Yet she didn't let it crush her. She turned those experiences into music, continuing to build her identity as a songwriter who transformed pain into poetry. In 2009 and 2010, Taylor embarked on the Fearless Tour, her first headlining world tour. The stage was decorated like a fairy tale, with castle backdrops, flowing dresses, and a sense of magic. Fans screamed along to every word, some of them holding signs that quoted her lyrics, others crying as they sang with her. Taylor didn't just perform, she created experiences. She spoke to the audience, telling stories between songs, making arenas feel like living rooms. That personal touch became her signature. No matter how big the stage, Taylor made each fan feel seen. Notice how Taylor connects with people through storytelling. In English, storytelling isn't just about words, it's about rhythm and feeling. Try repeating this sentence aloud. She turned those experiences into music, continuing to build her identity as a songwriter who transformed pain into poetry. Repeating phrases like this helps you practice fluency and adds emotion to your English, the same way singers add feeling to songs. Awards and recognition. The recognition Taylor received during the Fearless era was unprecedented for someone her age. She became the first country artist to win the MTV VMA for Best Female Video, the youngest Grammy winner for Album of the Year, and a crossover success in both pop and country charts. But perhaps her greatest achievement wasn't the trophies. It was the loyalty she built with her fans. Swifties, as they became known, weren't just listeners. They were a community. They related to her lyrics, they defended her online, and they followed her every move with devotion. Growing pains. Yet fame continued to be a double-edged sword. Tabloids began speculating about her relationships. Every friendship, every rumored romance became headline news. Taylor's love life, often exaggerated by the press, became gossip fodder. She learned quickly that with fame came narratives she couldn't always control. But rather than letting it define her, she did what she always did best. She wrote about it. Each heartbreak, each lesson, and each rumor became fuel for her songwriting. By the end of the Fearless era, Taylor Swift was no longer just a rising star. She was a household name. She had conquered the country charts, dominated pop radio, and proven herself on the world's biggest stages. But with greater fame came greater challenges. The years ahead would bring heartbreak, reinvention, and battles with the media. Taylor's journey had only just begun, and her next chapter, Red, would show the world a more complex, vulnerable, and powerful version of the girl who once dreamed of fairy tales. Part 4. Red, Heartbreak, and Reinvention. After the whirlwind success of Fearless, Taylor Swift stood on top of the music world. Awards filled her shelves, her songs dominated radio, and her name was now recognized around the globe. But with success came pressure. How do you follow up an album that defined a generation? Taylor's answer came in the form of her 2012 album, Red. It wasn't just an album, it was a turning point. The making of Red. For Taylor, Red represented complexity. She described it as an album about all the emotions that are hard to describe. Love, heartbreak, confusion, jealousy, longing. Feelings that didn't fit neatly into categories. To her, they felt like colors. Vivid, messy, impossible to ignore. Musically, Red was experimental. She blended her country roots with pop, rock, and even electronic influences. Tracks like We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together announced to the world that Taylor could command pop charts just as easily as she had conquered country. But at its heart, Red was about vulnerability. Songs like All Too Well painted vivid portraits of heartbreak, lyrics so detailed and raw that listeners felt like they were living inside her diary. Even today, All Too Well is considered one of her greatest works, a song that defines the art of storytelling in music. Heartbreaks and public scrutiny. During the Red era, Taylor's personal life was under more scrutiny than ever. Tabloids obsessed over her relationships, speculating endlessly about her romances with famous figures like Jake Gyllenhaal and Harry Styles. Headlines reduced her to the girl who writes about exes. This criticism frustrated Taylor. Her male counterparts could write about love and heartbreak without judgment, yet she was mocked for doing the same. But instead of silencing her, the criticism fueled her. She doubled down on her authenticity, writing even more openly about her feelings. All Too Well, for instance, was rumored to chronicle a painful breakup. Listeners didn't just hear a song, they felt the devastation of lost love, the sharp sting of memory. Taylor wasn't just telling her story, she was telling everyone's story, the Red Tour. In 2013, Taylor launched the Red Tour, performing in stadiums and arenas worldwide. Her shows were larger, more theatrical, filled with elaborate costumes, dancers, and massive stage designs. But even as the production grew, Taylor maintained her signature intimacy. She would sit with her guitar on stage, speak to the crowd like old friends, and perform acoustic versions of her songs. Fans weren't just watching a concert, they were sharing a conversation. The Red Tour was a commercial juggernaut, grossing more than $150 million. It solidified Taylor's position as one of the most powerful live performers of her generation. Critical reception and turning point. While Red was a commercial success, it also marked a crossroads. Country music purists criticized her for moving away from her roots, while pop critics hesitated to fully embrace her. She was straddling two worlds not fully claimed by either. But Taylor saw Red as an essential step. It was her way of experimenting, of finding her sound beyond the boundaries of genre. She later said, "Red was the album of my heartbreak and my growth. It was the sound of me trying to figure it all out." The 2010s media narrative. As her fame grew, so did the narratives around her. Magazines labeled her as boy crazy, comedians joked about her exes, and the media often reduced her artistry to gossip. Taylor faced a dilemma. Should she defend herself or let her work speak for itself? She chose the latter. She poured her frustrations into her songs, creating lyrics that pushed back against stereotypes. In Begin Again, she sang about finding hope after heartbreak. In 22, she celebrated youth and freedom. Behind the scenes, however, Taylor admitted that the criticism hurt. She often journaled about feeling misunderstood, about how people saw her as a tabloid character rather than an artist. But once again, she used pain as fuel. Notice how Taylor turns negative criticism into creative expression. In English learning, you can do the same. Take a simple sentence and transform it with emotion. For example, simple, I felt sad. Expressive, I felt like the world had turned gray and every step was heavier than the last. By practicing expressive language, you make your English richer and more powerful, just as Taylor makes her lyrics unforgettable. Legacy of Red. By the end of the Red era, Taylor had grown from a country star into a global pop cultural force. Red sold millions of copies, earned Grammy nominations, and gave fans some of her most beloved songs. But more importantly, it was a statement. Taylor Swift could not be boxed into one genre, one stereotype, or one narrative. She was reinventing herself, and the world would have to keep up. The Red era was bittersweet. It was filled with heartbreak and criticism, but also with growth and reinvention. Taylor had taken risks, expanded her artistry, and embraced her power as a storyteller. Her next move would be bold. With her 2014 album 1989, Taylor would leave country behind entirely and step fully into the world of pop. It was a risk that could have ended her career, or, as history would show, launched her into global superstardom. Part 5, 1989 and Global Domination. When Taylor Swift announced that her next album would be a full pop record, the music industry held its breath. By 2014, she had become one of the biggest names in country and pop country crossovers, but a complete departure from her Nashville roots was risky. Would her fans follow? Could she reinvent herself and still remain authentic? Taylor had no doubts. 1989, named after her birth year, wasn't just an album. It was a rebirth. For Taylor, the move into pop wasn't a betrayal of her country roots. It was a natural evolution. She had grown up, and so had her sound. Working with producers like Max Martin and Jack Antonoff, she created sleek, synth-driven tracks that echoed the sounds of the late 80s and early 90s, while keeping her storytelling heart intact. Reinvention. When she released Shake It Off as the lead single, it was a clear declaration. She wasn't just changing genres, she was shaking off the labels, criticisms, and stereotypes that had followed her. The upbeat anthem became a worldwide sensation, encouraging listeners to dance through their struggles and ignore negativity. The second single, Blank Space, was even bolder. Instead of running from the media narrative that painted her as a serial dater, Taylor embraced it, crafting a satirical, self-aware character who was unhinged, glamorous, and dangerously in love. The music video, with Taylor smashing cars and crying in ball gowns, became iconic. The 1989 album. Released in October 2014, 1989 was more than just a pop experiment. It was a cultural event. Critics hailed it as one of the best pop albums of the decade. Fans devoured tracks like Style, Wildest Dreams, and Out of the Woods. Each song carried the emotional storytelling that made Taylor unique, but wrapped in shimmering, modern pop production. The album didn't just perform well, it dominated. 1,989 sold over 1.2 million copies in its first week in the US alone, a feat almost unheard of in the streaming era. It topped charts worldwide and stayed relevant for years. For the first time, Taylor wasn't just a crossover artist. She was a full-fledged pop megastar. The 1989 World Tour. To bring 1989 to life, Taylor launched the 1989 World Tour, one of the most ambitious tours of the decade. The shows were a spectacle of lights, choreography, and elaborate staging. But what truly set them apart was Taylor's ability to merge intimacy with grandeur. At each concert, she surprised fans with special guest appearances. From Mick Jagger to The Weeknd, from Selena Gomez to Justin Timberlake, Taylor brought icons onto her stage, making each concert feel like a once-in-a-lifetime event. The tour grossed over $250 million, making it one of the highest-grossing tours of all time. But beyond the numbers, the tour was a declaration of dominance. Taylor wasn't just competing in pop, she was leading it. Awards and recognition. The success of 1989 was recognized at the highest levels. At the 2016 Grammy Awards, Taylor became the first woman to win Album of the Year twice, an achievement that cemented her as one of the greatest artists of her generation. Her acceptance speech that night became legendary. Without mentioning names, she addressed those who had tried to take credit for her success, a subtle reference to Kanye West, who had reignited their feud with his song Famous. Taylor looked into the camera and told young women, "There are going to be people along the way who will try to undercut your success or take credit for your accomplishments. But if you just focus on the work, someday you will look around and know that it was you and the people who love you Who put you there? It was more than an award speech. It was a manifesto. Cultural icon. During the 1989 era, Taylor became more than a musician. She became a cultural icon. Her fashion choices influenced trends around the world. She was on magazine covers, interviewed by every major outlet, and recognized not just for her music but for her cultural impact. At the same time, Taylor began speaking out more publicly about her beliefs. She defended artists' rights in the streaming era, most famously writing an open letter to Apple Music criticizing their policy of not paying artists during free trial periods. Apple quickly reversed its policy, a testament to her influence. Taylor's ability to speak with clarity and conviction is part of why her words resonate. When you practice English, try using the same style. Be clear. Focus on the work, not the noise. Be powerful. Your story is yours to tell. Practice these aloud. Speaking with intention helps improve not only fluency, but also confidence, just as Taylor speaks confidently to millions. The Taylor Squad. The 1989 era also introduced the world to Taylor's so-called squad, a group of high-profile friends, including Gigi Hadid, Karlie Kloss, Selena Gomez, and Lena Dunham. They appeared in music videos, on red carpets, and at concerts, symbolizing female friendship and solidarity. Though later criticized by some as being too exclusive, the squad represented Taylor's growing cultural reach. She wasn't just shaping music, she was shaping conversations about celebrity, friendship, and feminism. Challenges in the spotlight. But superstardom also came with challenges. As Taylor's fame soared, so did backlash. Critics accused her of being calculated, of cultivating an image too carefully. Others questioned her personal life, her friendships, and her every move. Taylor began to feel the weight of living under constant scrutiny. Even as she was breaking records and inspiring millions, she faced narratives that painted her as manipulative or insincere. These whispers would later erupt into louder controversies, setting the stage for one of the most difficult chapters of her career. By the end of the 1989 era, Taylor Swift had done the unthinkable. She had left behind the genre that first embraced her and emerged as one of the most powerful figures in global pop music. She was no longer just a country star or even just a singer-songwriter. She was a world leader in culture, fashion, and music. But the higher she rose, the harsher the spotlight became. Ahead lay years of public feuds, betrayals, and reinventions. And when the world seemed ready to write her off, Taylor Swift would prove once again that she was more than ready to fight for her place in history. Part 6. Reputation and the Dark Times. By 2016, Taylor Swift stood at the very peak of global fame. With 1989, she had conquered pop music, broken records, and cemented her place as one of the most influential artists of her generation. Yet at the very moment she seemed untouchable, the world turned against her. What followed was a storm of media backlash, celebrity feuds, and a period of silence that tested her resilience more than ever before. Out of this chaos would rise Reputation, one of the most important albums of her career, the feud that shook the world. The seeds of this dark era began with her long, complicated history with Kanye West. Their story started at the 2009 MTV VMAs, when Kanye stormed the stage during Taylor's speech. In the years that followed, there were moments of reconciliation and public friendliness. But in 2016, Kanye released the song Famous, which included the controversial line, "I made that bitch famous." Taylor publicly objected to the lyric, calling it degrading. But then Kanye's wife, Kim Kardashian, released a secretly recorded phone call that seemed to show Taylor approving part of the lyric. The internet exploded. The hashtag Taylor Swift is over party trended worldwide, one of the first times a celebrity cancellation went viral on social media. Memes depicted Taylor as a snake. Headlines branded her a liar and manipulator. For the first time in her career, she wasn't celebrated. She was vilified. Retreat from the spotlight. The backlash hit Taylor hard. For a woman who had built her brand on authenticity and connection, being painted as fake was devastating. She disappeared from the public eye, canceling appearances, avoiding paparazzi, and rarely posting on social media. Fans wondered where she had gone. Critics speculated that her career was finished. But behind the silence, Taylor was plotting her most dramatic reinvention yet, the rise of Reputation. In August 2017, after months of silence, Taylor broke the internet with a single post, a video of a snake slithering across a black background. It was a bold move. She was taking the very symbol her haters had used against her and reclaiming it. Soon after, she announced her sixth studio album, Reputation. Its tagline was clear: there will be no explanation, just reputation. The lead single, Look What You Made Me Do, was unlike anything Taylor had released before. Dark, vengeful, and theatrical, it featured Taylor declaring, "The old Taylor can't come to the phone right now." Why? 'Cause she's dead. The song divided critics but fascinated the public. The music video shattered YouTube records, with Taylor portraying multiple versions of herself: sweet, glamorous, villainous, mocking the ways the media had portrayed her. It was both a confession and a battle cry. A new Taylor. Reputation wasn't just about anger. It was about resilience. Songs like Delicate and New Year's Day revealed her vulnerability beneath the armor. She sang about finding love when the world was against her, about the fragility of trust, and about rebuilding after destruction. Much of the album was inspired by her relationship with British actor Joe Alwyn, whom she began dating during her time away from the spotlight. While the world saw her as a tabloid headline, Taylor was quietly experiencing one of the most stable, grounding relationships of her life: the Reputation Stadium Tour. In 2018, Taylor launched the Reputation Stadium Tour, her biggest and boldest tour yet. The stage featured massive snake imagery, elaborate visuals, and some of the most spectacular production ever seen in a concert. The tour became the highest-grossing U.S. tour of all time, earning over $300 to $45 million worldwide. It was a stunning comeback. The same artist who had been declared over was now filling stadiums with screaming fans. Netflix later released Taylor Swift Reputation Stadium Tour, allowing millions more to witness the spectacle. It was proof that while critics had tried to tear her down, her bond with fans was unbreakable. Lessons in survival. The Reputation era taught Taylor the harshest lesson of fame. The world can turn on you in an instant, but it also revealed her resilience. Instead of letting the backlash define her, she reinvented herself. She used the snake, once a symbol of betrayal and hate, as a symbol of rebirth. In interviews later, Taylor admitted how difficult that period had been. She spoke about the loneliness, the fear, and the way she questioned her place in the world. Yet she also described it as necessary. It forced her to shed the need for approval and focus instead on the love she had from her fans and the people closest to her. Notice how Taylor transformed a negative word into a positive symbol. In English, you can practice this by flipping meanings. Example: negative, snake means betrayal. Positive, snake means survival, rebirth, and power. Try this exercise. Pick a negative word in English, then create a positive meaning for it. This helps expand your vocabulary and creative thinking, just like Taylor expands meaning through her art. By the end of the Reputation era, Taylor Swift had not only survived her darkest chapter, she had thrived. She had faced global humiliation, but emerged stronger, bolder, and more unapologetic. The old Taylor, as she once said, was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that reputation could be destroyed, rebuilt, and owned. And as the lights dimmed on Reputation, Taylor was already writing the next chapter, one that would embrace color, joy, and love in ways she hadn't dared for years. Her next album, Lover, would remind the world that even after the darkest storm, there is always a sunrise. Part 7. Lover, Folklore, and Evermore. A time of reinvention and reflection. After the storm of Reputation, Taylor Swift was ready to step back into the light. In 2019, she unveiled her seventh studio album, Lover, a kaleidoscope of color, hope, and self-discovery. If Reputation was about surviving in the shadows, Lover was about dancing in the sun again. The World of Lover. Released in August 2019, Lover was described by Taylor as a love letter to love itself. It was brighter, more playful, and more open-hearted than anything she had released in years. The album carried songs about romance, freedom, nostalgia, and political awakening. The lead single, Me, with Brendan Urie, celebrated individuality and joy, while You Need to Calm Down became an anthem for LGBTQ+ rights, addressing hate with humor and defiance. For the first time, Taylor spoke openly about politics, endorsing equality and using her platform for advocacy. But Lover wasn't only about external love, it was about internal healing. Songs like The Archer showed her vulnerability, while the title track, Lover, painted an intimate portrait of her deep relationship with Joe Alwyn. Fans saw a new Taylor, one who had survived fire and found comfort in peace. Commercially, Lover was another success, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200. But more importantly, it felt like a rebirth of joy in Taylor's music. The pandemic shift. Just months after Lover's release, the world changed. In early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic forced lockdowns, canceling tours, and halting live events. For Taylor, it meant the end of her planned Loverfest tour. But instead of retreating, she did something unexpected. She created. Alone in her home, isolated from the usual pressures of fame, Taylor rediscovered her purest love for songwriting. She collaborated remotely with Aaron Dessner of The National and her longtime partner, Jack Antonoff, crafting songs that were stripped back, emotional, and intimate. The result was Folklore, released in July 2020. Folklore, the unexpected masterpiece. Folklore was unlike anything Taylor had done before. Gone were the bright pop anthems and glittering stages. Instead, the album embraced indie folk with soft piano, acoustic guitars, and haunting melodies. Lyrically, Taylor shifted from autobiographical stories to fictional characters. Songs like Cardigan, August, and Betty told the interconnected story of a teenage love triangle, blending imagination with emotion. Other tracks like The Last Great American Dynasty recounted the history of Rebecca Harkness, the former owner of Taylor's Rhode Island mansion. Critics hailed Folklore as one of the greatest albums of 2020, praising its maturity, depth, and artistry. It won Album of the Year at the Grammys, making Taylor the first woman to win the award 3 times. But perhaps the most powerful thing about Folklore was its timing. In the midst of global isolation, Taylor gave the world comfort, reflection, and beauty. Evermore, the surprise sister. Just when fans thought Folklore was a one-time experiment, Taylor surprised the world again. In December 2020, she released Evermore, a sister album to Folklore. Where Folklore was dreamlike, Evermore felt grounded. It continued the indie folk style, but leaned even deeper into storytelling. Songs like Willow explored magical imagery, while Champagne Problems told the heartbreaking story of a failed proposal. Together, Folklore and Evermore represented some of Taylor's boldest artistry. She had proven that she could dominate stadium pop tours and create quiet, intimate masterpieces. She was no longer confined by genre. She was simply an artist, free to explore any sound she desired. Personal growth and private love. During this time, Taylor's relationship with Joe Alwyn remained mostly private. Unlike her past high-profile romances, this relationship was shielded from the public eye. They co-wrote several songs together under the pseudonym William Bowery, including Exile and Betty. For Taylor, it was a partnership built on trust, creativity, and stability. She also found strength in her family. In 2020, Taylor revealed that her mother, Andrea, was battling cancer again. The experience deepened Taylor's sense of gratitude and influenced heartfelt songs like Soon You'll Get Better. Notice the shift in Taylor's songwriting from Lover to Folklore. She moved from personal to universal, from I stories to we stories. In English, you can practice this too. Try rewriting personal sentences in universal terms. Personal, I felt sad when I was alone. Universal, loneliness feels heavy, like a room without light. This exercise not only improves your English, but also teaches you to write like a storyteller, just as Taylor does. A new kind of legacy. By the end of 2020, Taylor had achieved what many thought impossible. She had released two critically acclaimed albums in less than 6 months, both entirely different from her past work. Fans praised her for showing vulnerability during a time when the world needed connection. Critics marveled at her ability to reinvent herself, not once, but repeatedly. And for Taylor, it was proof that music wasn't just a career. It was a lifeline, a way to process the world around her. The Lover, Folklore, and Evermore era marked a period of healing, creativity, and rebirth for Taylor Swift. She had reclaimed joy with Lover, explored artistry with Folklore, and solidified her place as one of the most versatile musicians of her generation with Evermore. The world had once tried to cancel her. Now in the quiet of quarantine, she had written herself back into the history books. And just when people thought she had reached her artistic peak, Taylor Swift was preparing for another revolution. The fight for her masters, the birth of Taylor's version, and the cultural dominance of the Eras era. Part 8. The Taylor's Version Revolution. By 2020, Taylor Swift had conquered nearly every corner of the music industry. Chart records, sold-out tours, Grammy wins, cultural influence. Yet behind the accolades, there was a painful truth. She didn't fully own her first 6 albums. This fact would ignite one of the most public, emotional, and ultimately triumphant battles in modern music history, the fight for her masters. And from that fight, Taylor's version was born. The Masters Controversy. The roots of the conflict began with Taylor's contract at Big Machine Records, the label she signed with as a teenager. Like many young artists, she had agreed that the label would own the masters, the original recordings of her songs. In exchange, she was given the chance to record and release music. For years, Taylor accepted this as the price of entry into the industry. But as she grew in success and influence, she wanted more control. When her contract with Big Machine expired in 2018, she signed with Republic Records and Universal Music Group, securing a deal that allowed her to own all future masters. But the fate of her older catalog, Taylor Swift, Fearless, Speak Now, Red 1989, and Reputation, remained in limbo. In 2019, it was announced that Big Machine had been sold to Scooter Braun, a powerful music manager known for representing artists like Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande. This meant that Braun, someone Taylor had accused of bullying her in the past, now owned the masters of her life's work. Taylor described the news as her worst-case scenario. She publicly condemned the sale, saying, "Essentially, my musical legacy is about to lie in the hands of someone who tried to dismantle it." The feud dominated headlines. It wasn't just about business. It was about power, ownership, and respect. Taylor's bold solution. Instead of giving up, Taylor turned to an audacious plan. She would re-record her old albums. By doing so, she would create new versions, Taylor's versions, that she would fully own. At first, critics wondered if this strategy would work. Would fans really abandon the original versions they had grown up with? Could lightning strike twice for songs released a decade earlier? Taylor had no doubts. She trusted her fans, and her fans trusted her. Fearless, Taylor's version. In April 2021, she released her first re-recorded album, Fearless, Taylor's version. It included not only the beloved hits, Love Story, You Belong With Me, but also from the vault tracks, songs she had written during that era but never released. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, proving the strategy worked. Fans embraced the re-recordings, often deleting or refusing to stream the old versions. For them, it wasn't just about music, it was about loyalty. Supporting Taylor's versions was a way to stand with her in reclaiming her legacy. Red, Taylor's version, and the 10-minute masterpiece. Later that year in November 2021, Taylor released Red, Taylor's version. If Fearless, Taylor's version, had been a celebration, Red, Taylor's version, was a cultural earthquake. The centerpiece was the long-rumored 10-minute version of All Too Well. Fans had speculated about its existence for years, and when Taylor finally released it, it became a phenomenon. The song shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it the longest song in history to top the chart. The accompanying short film, directed by Taylor and starring Sadie Sink and Dylan O'Brien, brought the song to life with heartbreaking visuals. It wasn't just a track, it was an event, one that solidified Taylor's reputation as both a musician and a filmmaker. Speak Now, 1989, and beyond. The re-recordings continued with Speak Now, Taylor's version, in 2023 and 1989, Taylor's version, later that same year. Each release brought with it nostalgia, excitement, and renewed devotion from her fans. The Taylor's Version project became more than a business strategy. It was a cultural statement. Taylor had turned what could have been a devastating loss into a victory, not just for herself, but for artists everywhere. She showed young musicians that ownership matters, that contracts have consequences, and that art belongs to the artist. Fan loyalty and community. What made the Taylor's Version revolution truly remarkable was the unprecedented loyalty of her fan base. Swifties didn't just stream the new albums, they organized campaigns, created social media trends, and even pressured film studios, brands, and advertisers to use only Taylor's versions of her songs. For example, when the original version of Love Story appeared on TikTok, fans flooded the platform with requests to replace it with the re-recording. When commercials or movies wanted to license her music, they were encouraged by fans to use Taylor's versions. It was perhaps the clearest demonstration of the bond between artist and audience in modern music. Taylor had stood up for herself, and her fans stood right beside her. This chapter of Taylor's life shows the power of determined language. Try practicing sentences that show confidence. I will reclaim what is mine. This is not the end, it's a new beginning. Say them out loud. Notice how strong, declarative sentences build confidence in English, just as they did for Taylor when she declared her fight for ownership. Legacy of the re-recordings. By the time 1989 Taylor's Version topped charts in 2023, Taylor had achieved something few thought possible. She had replaced her old legacy with a new one, entirely on her own terms. Industry experts marveled at the accomplishment. Other artists began renegotiating contracts, citing Taylor's stand as inspiration. She had changed the way the music industry talked about ownership, forever. And yet, for Taylor, it wasn't just about business. It was about storytelling. She had written the narrative of her career once through her songs. Now with Taylor's Versions, she was writing it again. Not as the teenager who signed her rights away, but as the woman who reclaimed them. The Taylor's Version era was not just about music, it was about revolution. Taylor Swift had taken one of the greatest losses of her career and turned it into one of her most empowering victories. She had proven that art doesn't just belong to corporations or contracts, it belongs to the creator. And in doing so, she didn't just reclaim her past, she redefined her future. But Taylor Swift's story wasn't finished yet. The next chapter would see her embark on her most ambitious project to date, the Eras Tour, a cultural phenomenon that would break records, unite generations, and show the world the unstoppable force of her music and legacy. Part 9, the Eras Tour and Billionaire Legacy. By 2022, Taylor Swift had already lived multiple artistic lifetimes. She had been a country prodigy, a pop superstar, a tabloid target, a cultural icon, and a revolutionary in artist ownership. But even after Taylor's Version, Folklore, and Evermore, she had yet another chapter to write, one that would take her beyond music charts and into the realm of global history. That chapter was called the Eras Tour, the Eras Tour announcement. In late 2022, Taylor announced the Eras Tour, describing it as a journey through all of my musical eras. Instead of focusing on a single album, she envisioned a 3-hour-long performance that would travel across her entire discography, country beginnings, pop anthems, indie folk reflections, and beyond. Fans immediately recognized the magnitude of the idea. Taylor wasn't just promoting an album, she was celebrating her entire career, from Taylor Swift, 2006, to Midnights, 2022. It would be a retrospective, a love letter, and a cultural event rolled into one. When tickets went on sale in November 2022, demand was unprecedented. Ticketmaster crashed under the surge of millions of fans trying to buy seats. Lawsuits, investigations, and government hearings followed, with Ticketmaster's failure making national news. But even this chaos only emphasized one fact. The world wanted to see Taylor Swift more than ever. A cultural phenomenon. The tour began in March 2023 in Glendale, Arizona, which the city temporarily renamed Swift City in her honor. From the first show, it was clear that the Eras Tour was more than a concert. It was a cultural phenomenon. The production was massive, over 3 hours long, with more than 40 songs, multiple costume changes, elaborate sets, and stunning visuals. The show felt like a Broadway musical, a rock concert, and a pop festival combined. Each era had its own aesthetic. The fairy tale dresses of Fearless, the neon lights of 1989, the dark imagery of Reputation, the cottage-core simplicity of Folklore and Evermore. Fans arrived dressed in outfits inspired by their favorite era, trading handmade friendship bracelets in homage to a lyric from You're on Your Own, Kid. Social media flooded with clips, reactions, and trends. Each concert became a global event, whether you were in the stadium or watching online. The Midnights era. Just before the tour, Taylor released her 10th studio album, Midnights, in October 2022. It became the soundtrack to the tour's final act. Songs like Anti-Hero and Lavender Haze explored self-reflection, insecurity, and love, wrapped in a dreamy synth-pop sound. Midnights broke streaming records, with Taylor becoming the first artist in history to occupy the entire top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 simultaneously. The album's success added fresh energy to the Eras Tour, showing that even after nearly 2 decades, Taylor's creative fire was still blazing. Economic impact. As the tour expanded across the U.S. and later the globe, economists began to notice something remarkable. Taylor Swift was not only filling stadiums, she was stimulating entire economies. Hotels booked out months in advance, airlines saw spikes in travel, restaurants near venues reported record sales. In the U.S. alone, the tour was estimated to generate over $5 billion in economic impact, comparable to hosting a Super Bowl in dozens of cities. Mayors gave her keys to cities. Governors declared Taylor Swift days. In Argentina, the government adjusted policies to handle the massive demand for her shows. In Singapore, the government signed an exclusive deal to secure her concerts, boosting tourism. Taylor Swift wasn't just a performer, she had become an economic force of nature, billionaire status. By 2023, Forbes confirmed what fans had long suspected. Taylor Swift had officially become a billionaire, largely thanks to the Eras Tour, her re-recordings, and smart business decisions. What made her billionaire status unique was that it came not from endorsements or side ventures, but from music itself, something increasingly rare in the modern entertainment industry. She had built her fortune by writing songs, touring, and owning her art. Eras Tour film. Recognizing the demand, Taylor released Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour concert film in October 2023. Distributed directly to theaters without a major Hollywood studio, the film grossed over $250 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing concert film of all time. Once again, Taylor had rewritten the rules. She had bypassed traditional systems, negotiated directly with theater chains, and created another cultural event. Fans who couldn't attend the tour now had a chance to experience it on the big screen. A global voice. Beyond music and business, Taylor also became a more confident political and social voice during this era. She spoke out about voting rights, LGBTQ plus equality, and women's empowerment. Her documentary Miss Americana, 2020, had already revealed her journey from a cautious public figure to a woman unafraid to use her platform. By the Eras era, she was unapologetic in her influence. She reminded fans to register to vote, breaking records for voter signups. She championed young women in the industry, mentoring and uplifting peers. The Eras Tour shows the importance of celebrating every stage of growth. In English practice, you can mirror this by describing your own eras. For example, in my childhood era, I learned curiosity. In my student era, I built resilience. In my professional era, I am learning leadership. This method not only improves vocabulary but also helps you structure your life story in English, just as Taylor structures hers through music. Emotional connection. What made the Eras Tour extraordinary wasn't just its scale, it was the intimacy Taylor maintained with her audience. In every stadium, she told stories before songs, laughed with fans, and created moments of vulnerability. When she played surprise acoustic songs each night, fans felt like they were witnessing history. Entire stadiums sang along to ballads like All Too Well, 10-minute version, creating a collective catharsis rarely seen in live music. For many fans, attending the Eras Tour wasn't just a concert, it was a life milestone, a memory they would carry forever. By the end of 2023, Taylor Swift had transformed from a musician into a global movement. The Eras Tour wasn't just about nostalgia or performance, it was about reclaiming power, celebrating resilience, and uniting millions in joy. She had become a billionaire through her music alone, an artist whose influence touched economies, politics, and culture. From Pennsylvania farm girl to the most powerful entertainer on earth, her journey was almost mythic. But Taylor Swift's story doesn't end here. Ahead lies her legacy, how she will be remembered not just as a singer or songwriter, but as a trailblazer, a voice for generations, and a symbol of the power of storytelling. Part 10, Legacy, Life Lessons, and Lasting Influence. As the lights of the Eras Tour continued to shine across continents, one truth became undeniable. Taylor Swift was no longer just an entertainer. She was a cultural institution, a storyteller whose words and melodies had shaped not only a generation of music, but the very way millions of people connected with art, identity, and resilience. Her journey from a small-town girl in Pennsylvania to a billionaire global superstar wasn't just a rise to fame. It was a story of reinvention, courage, and the power of storytelling. And it leaves behind lessons that will resonate long after the final note is played. Redefining ownership. Perhaps Taylor's most enduring legacy will be her fight for artistic ownership. The Taylor's Version project didn't just give her back control over her masters, it rewrote the playbook for the music industry. For decades, artists had quietly accepted unfair contracts that gave away their life's work. But Taylor refused to remain silent. By publicly challenging the system and re-recording her albums, she forced the world to confront the imbalance of power between artists and corporations. Young musicians now look to her as proof that ownership matters, that your art belongs to you. In this way, Taylor Swift isn't just a singer-songwriter. She is a business pioneer and advocate for creators everywhere, a voice for generations. Taylor's songs have been the soundtrack to millions of lives. Teenagers cried to Teardrops on My Guitar. College students found themselves in All Too Well. Adults reconnected with nostalgia through Love Story, Taylor's Version. And with Folklore and Evermore, even literary critics praised her as a poet of the pandemic era. Her ability to evolve with her fans, writing about teenage crushes, then heartbreak, then self-reflection, then empowerment, means she has grown alongside them. Few artists have managed to stay so deeply relevant for so long. Beyond music, her speeches, interviews, and documentaries have inspired young women to speak up, to take control of their narratives, and to embrace vulnerability as strength. Cultural and economic power. Taylor Swift's influence reaches far beyond art. The economic ripple effects of her tours and releases are unmatched in modern entertainment. Cities saw tourism spikes, businesses flourished, and entire economies felt the impact of her concerts. Politically, her ability to mobilize millions of young people to register to vote showed the power of celebrity when wielded responsibly. Socially, her advocacy for LGBTQ, plus rights, gender equality, and artist protections made her a moral voice in times when silence would have been easier. Taylor Swift proved that fame doesn't have to be shallow. It can be purposeful, impactful, and transformative. Personal strength and vulnerability. Behind the glittering headlines lies a quieter story. A woman who faced loneliness, rejection, and betrayal, yet chose to turn every hardship into art. Bullied in school? She wrote songs about it. Publicly humiliated on live television? She used it to build resilience. Canceled by millions online? She transformed it into the most powerful comeback tour in history. Her greatest strength wasn't avoiding pain, it was using pain as fuel. That lesson will endure for generations. You don't have to escape your struggles, you can transform them into your legacy. The Swiftie community. Part of Taylor's lasting influence comes from the community she built. The Swifties are more than fans. They are a movement. They organize charitable drives, defend her online, trade friendship bracelets, and find connection through her lyrics. In many ways, Taylor created not just music, but a safe haven. Her concerts became spaces of joy, self-expression, and belonging. For millions, being a Swiftie is not just about enjoying songs. It's about being part of a family. Taylor's story shows how language itself can build community. Notice her lyric style. Clear, simple, but deeply emotional. You can practice English the same way by focusing on clarity plus feeling. For example, instead of, I was sad, try, I sat in silence, feeling the world move on without me. Adding detail and rhythm makes your English powerful and expressive, just like Taylor's songwriting. Lasting artistic legacy. Critics already rank Taylor among the greatest songwriters of all time. She has been compared to legends like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, and Paul McCartney for her ability to capture universal emotions with timeless lyrics. But unlike many before her, Taylor achieved this while navigating the unique pressures of the digital age, social media scrutiny, streaming revolutions, and public cancel culture. The fact that she not only survived but thrived makes her story even more remarkable. Her influence can be seen in the new generation of artists, Olivia Rodrigo, Conan Gray, Phoebe Bridgers, who cite her as inspiration. Her mark on the industry is indelible. Looking ahead. Even as she celebrates nearly 2 decades of success, Taylor shows no signs of slowing down. Rumors of future re-recordings, new albums, and additional creative ventures continue to swirl. She has already proven her skill as a director with short films. Could full-length movies be next? Whatever the future holds, one truth remains. Taylor Swift has transcended music. She is a brand, a movement, and a symbol of resilience. From the little girl in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, writing songs in her bedroom, to the woman filling stadiums across the globe, Taylor Swift's story is one of relentless determination. She faced rejection, humiliation, and betrayal, but at every stage she wrote her way through it. She once said, "The way you experience music is how you experience life. It's about stories, emotions, and connections." That's her legacy, not just chart-topping hits or billionaire status, but the reminder that stories matter, that art can heal, that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. Taylor Swift changed the industry. She changed the culture, and perhaps most importantly, she changed lives.